Good afternoon. And welcome. I'm Chandra De Silva, Special Assistant to the Provost, and I'm taking Provost Carol Simpson's place today in introducing the speaker. I thank you all for coming here today, because by your presence here, you are indicating that you are ready to miss the annual pumpkin drop from BAL to listen to Karen Polonko. And also we have a couple of other competing events, including the Women's Caucus meeting with the deans. But my task here today is to welcome you formally to the Provost Conversations on Teaching and Learning, actually sponsored by the Center for Learning and Teaching. I'm particularly pleased to have the opportunity to welcome Karen, whom I have known for a long time. Now, I got a long account of Karen's achievements. I'm not going to repeat all of them today. Most of us know that she is a distinguished researcher who has published extensively. But she is here today as a wonderful teacher. Her teaching has been recognized within the College of Arts and Letters, because I know that she got the Robert L. Stern Award for Teaching Excellence. More recently, she got the Joel Lewis Award for Student Mentoring. But she's also been recognized outside the university. She is, of course, a university professor. And she's won a Chev Award, one of the really respected teachers in our college and the university. I can go on talking about Karen for a long time, but you didn't come to listen to me, you came to listen to Karen. And Karen is going to talk to you today about engaging students across disciplines, where the differences can be a problem for students. And so without spending too much more time, let me introduce Karen, and please welcome her.
Thank you, Chandra. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do something that I always tell my students to do, which is please check your phones. And then I always say I'm going to check mine to make sure it's off. And I just had a horrible thought. It's like, oh my goodness, if mine isn't off. What I tell my students is that you can have it on, but if it rings, you have to dance to the ringtone. That usually, one or two actually hams like it. I've actually had one or two do, Yes, and it was when the saints come marching in, right, and he was just doing it all. So sometimes that doesn't work in terms of getting people not to do that, especially when I leave mine on, because I'm not used to having one until relatively recently. Thank you. I am very honored to have you all here to help me figure out some things. And I'm trying to think about where am I supposed to, here we go. Yep, my first focus was very narrow. In agreeing to do this, I did it because I needed help. I had faced a problem over the years, as had some of my colleagues, that some of the techniques that some faculty used to involve students was actually subverting learning in the social science disciplines. That, in particular, the difference was subverting an ability or our effort to teach the difference between social research and personal experience, anecdotal evidence, and personal opinion. And so that's critical in the social sciences. We need to teach them objective, we need to teach them research. So I thought, okay, I will be able to come here and get some help. I didn't realize I would be on YouTube to embarrass my nieces and nephews and to stand as a historical example of how not to engage an audience when you talk about student engagement. That's very disconcerting, but so be it. Okay, so at first I was just going to come here and talk about my personal experiences, but then I thought, no, I have to engage you all and look at this. I need to look at the research. So I spent about 50 hours immersing myself in this journey of what is teaching excellence, what's teaching effectiveness, what are the best practices according to the research that we're supposed to be using to engage students, okay? Now, one of the first things that I wanted to figure out is I know all about the research on teaching excellence. I was very lucky to have in my earlier years, back in the 1800s, I was very lucky to have workshops funded by the university, by the college to train us in how to become excellent teachers. That's not something that people tend to say you're born with it, but I don't really think, well, I know that's not true. It takes a lot of hard work and training, just like research or becoming skilled in any discipline. Now, I knew excellence, but what's this stuff on student engagement? I hadn't really looked at it very much. Well, apparently, you can correct me, but it began with A Nation at Risk and this report that scared everyone to death, saying that over 20 years, the amount of homework that high school seniors had done had decreased. 2/3 of them reported less than 1 hour a night. However, at that same time, over time, the grades had increased and student achievement scores in all areas had decreased. Okay, so who do you think they blamed? Teachers, right? We are indeed responsible for everything. We do need to just put that out there right now, accept it, own it, and not. Okay, so the blame was put on teachers, right, from grade school through university. And as a result, we had a massive push at all different levels for best practices to make teachers engage the students. Now, what does that mean? That means in addition to preparing lectures and tests, becoming scholars in our own areas, we now are responsible for figuring out how to get our students to come to class, to get them to study, to get them to do their homework, to want to learn, and to participate in class. Okay. Now, this long list of factors that they began doing this research over the 25 years was based originally on sort of theory and common sense, which is always scary. I mean, because we don't know how much we're really investing in what may have nothing to do with the outcomes that we desire. However, this is what we have. We have measures in the literature that look at student engagement in 4 areas. We ask students, national random samples of high school and college, we say, how much effort do you put in terms of studying? Do you do your homework? Participation? Do you ask questions in class? Emotional, I don't know why they call this emotional, but do you care about learning? And finally, performance, do you care about your grades? Okay, that's what we ask them. Now, it was assumed that if we could get high school teachers, faculty, universities to engage in the best practices of student engagement, to do that, that would increase student engagement. That would make them do their homework. That would increase the chances of doing their homework. In other words, engagement, coming to class, participating, wanting to learn. And in turn, this would increase critical thinking. So this would increase critical thinking, academic skill development, grades, institutional retention, a big concern for many universities, as well as degree completion. Those are all lofty goals. But the question that we're going to look at is what do these really accomplish and how do they measure them? So the first question I have is, how do you think they measured university best practices of student engagement? Just a few ideas, and if you'll guess with me, and then I will show you how they did measure it. And by the way, I was asked to remind you, which I'll forget, that since this is videotaped, that even though we can hear each other, you need to talk into the microphone, or else posterity will not, your children will not hear you when they look at YouTube and your comments. So, any ideas?
My guess is they polled students and they looked at student evaluations.
Ah, you would think. Okay, that could be one. Okay, that's a good idea. Well, yes, what else? So what factor do you think that would come out in that? that we would do, or that the university would do, that would get them to study more, to care more about learning?
Instilling
Passion
passion.
passion for your work, called enthusiasm. Okay, enthusiasm, passion, caring about learning for yourself and them. Student evaluation to see what's important to them, which has been looked at in teaching excellence. Anything else?
What the faculty actually did, would they have measured that?
What they did in terms of?
In terms of the class.
In class.
In class, yes.
Yep.
Maybe like the amount of reading, amount of writing, that sort of thing.
Spoken like a scholar, all of you. All of these. Okay, what do we find? This is what they measured. Okay, these are the measures. Engagement, academic challenge, high academic expectations, just as this is how they measured it, and how they can, and as they've iterated over time, these have become more and more refined. But exactly as you all have been saying, how high are our expectations for our students? Okay, we know they're coming in, some of them ill-prepared. Do we just say, oh well, and just decrease the readings substantially, or do we make an effort to work with them and figure out a way, or what do we, at any rate, effective teaching, active collaboration, and supportive campus environment. So in terms of indicators, well, one of the things that we find, and I'll just go through these, indicators in terms, how do they measure it? Well, in terms of academic challenge, they measure it for rigorous class and exams, and that's the amount, the number of readings, the amount of reading, text plus readings, okay? The number and length of papers, how rigorous the topics are, not just writing your opinion about something, but doing a research paper on something, or somehow academically engaging them, higher order concepts. An intellectual, scholarly emphasis, not only in the class. Notice how it's not, we're not, this actually was very comforting to me in terms of my own teaching styles, that an academic, scholarly emphasis, and not only in the class, but on campus. Now that doesn't exclude football and cheerleading and all those things, but it does mean that overall who we are, we're a scholarly academic institution that value that. Effective teaching, strong faculty interest in teaching and student development. One of the things they don't measure that teaching excellence measures historically have always emphasized is passion and enthusiasm. Not how well of an actor or actress you are, but how passionate you are about your research, about, do you love what you're studying, and if you do, it's contagious. They get it. They can't help but get it. Well, most of them. Okay, and then when we're looking at a knowledge base, they know when you know. When they say, you know, well, what about this and this, and you can rattle off the research, rigorous use of higher order concepts, and so on. Again, notice that this is exactly the way. These are measures of teaching excellence that have been looked at for decades, and having been on most of the award committees, at least in the state, I've been on the Chev committees and so on. This is what we look for. We look for rigor. We look for, do students say this has changed my life? Now that means you're also going to say, some students say this is a graduate level class, I don't like it. But we're looking for, do faculty keep them over even a few minutes because they're so excited they can't stop, okay? Or things like that. But this is, now what is this, and then we have the next, frequency of student interaction with faculty and staff, and that's an academic staff, active collaboration in terms of opportunities for peers, with their peers. Now that's not just inside the class. That's been interpreted as, let's just give them outside class projects and make them do an academic project that they get graded on. Now, how many of you have found that students love this? One. You will teach us later. I will come to your, I will find. How many have found that students don't like this very much? I know I have. And what are the complaints usually? It's too hard to meet together. We all have we all have active lives. Why do you make us meet? What else? Anything?
They don't want their grades being dependent on the work of unprepared.
Exactly, especially the good students, quote unquote, who say, well, they gave me just one page and I had to do the whole thing. Please don't. Well, my grade is right. But regardless, this isn't just about that. What the research measures, but has just begun to measure, is do we get them into co-curricular activities? You know, Model UN, In Support of Children, NABJA, National Association for Blacks in Criminal Justice, related to our discipline so they get to know each other. Do we get them involved in lots of different ways? And a supportive campus environment, surprisingly not, in terms of how much support does the university provide for them when they need. We have students that can't do the work. Is there university help for that? Is there help for students who have family emergencies, who have lost their jobs, or whatever it is? Okay, now, we've been looking at this for 25 years. We've been implementing this for 25 years. What do we find 25 years later? Well, what it says here is that in an analysis, it found that college seniors, 90% say they're going to go to college. Half of them studied 3 or fewer hours per week. Not even 1 hour a night now. It's 3 hours per week. And 2/3 of them were receiving A's and B's. So this gives us a sense of, I thought in the last few years I was just getting crankier and crankier with the student preparedness, but in general, it's a national kind of trend. Thank goodness it's not just getting older, that some of them are coming less prepared. So it's going to be more difficult for us. In addition to which, half of them, not even half, said that they were challenged or interested in learning. Okay, so they're coming not prepared very much, a lot of them. Now, as it says here, students, this takes on a lot of significance because, and I need to move, so I want to get more feedback later on, that students, interventions later on are not very effective. They're only minimally effective. And that's sort of scary to me. It was very sobering when I didn't know that, okay, until I looked at this literature. As it says here, students who do not attain grade level proficiencies in math and reading by 8th grade are much less likely to be college ready by the end of high school. That's 8th grade. And then students who are not doing well in English and math, later interventions have modest effects at best on getting them to graduate college. Okay? The fact that later intervention has minimal effects fits with the findings, much of the research, including a comprehensive review by Fredericks, who found, the research finds that the teachers' ratings of behavioral engagement of children, students in 1st grade, participation, did they do their homework, are they studying, actually predicts achievement scores, grades over the first 4 years, and even the decision to drop out of high school. 1st grade. 1st grade. Okay? Yeah, I was actually quite disheartened. At one point I said to some of my colleagues when I finished this, why do I bother? What am I was like, but I found a way to get the passion back and encouragement back. Okay, this makes a lot of sense with the research that I'm familiar with on children. Okay, early grades are most profoundly affected, early educational orientation, by parent factors. Not just parent education and income, but parental values. A big predictor, do you have a dictionary in your house? That's it, okay? By educational encouragement by parents, by involvement. Do they sit down and torture you while doing homework, even when you're in kindergarten? I hated that. Apparently that was good for me. I don't know whether, okay, as well as the absence of other factors that harm the ability to engage right from the start, like prenatal substance abuse, which harms cognitive development, including cigarette smoking or drinking, as well as postnatal neglect and abuse. These are important factors very early on that we need to address as we look at this as we look at this whole process, and if we really want to solve problems. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this second phase and then third. Given the above findings, it's not surprising at all, I guess, that if you look at multivariate analysis means, for some of you who may not know, is that you can look at the bivariate relationship, the relationship between two variables, but if you control for something that may really account for that relationship, it may drop out. So in study after study, the biggest predictor of college grades is high school grades. How humbling. That's the biggest predictor, okay? High school grades and scores accounted for the majority of explained variance, 18.2% of the variance. The only thing that was an additional predictor of anything of student engagement was level of academic and challenge. How are we challenging them, making this rigorous? That was 1% of the variance, 18%, okay? So we move on, first year retention. Given what I just talked about in terms of research on children and childhood and so on and parent characteristics, multivariate analysis looking at retention at the same institution, not retention in general, those have different predictors, but at retention at the same institution show if you have characteristics of parents, parental encouragement is one of the largest predictors of institutional retention. What does that suggest? One of the efforts we might want to do if we want to retain our students here is get our parents more involved, make them more committed, maybe, okay?
Without violating privacy rules.
Yeah, that becomes another issue that people raise, that, you know, parents used to call, how is my student doing? I mean, how's my child doing? Well, I can't talk to you, we can't bring this in, yeah. But bringing them in, getting them more committed. In additional factors have to do with retention, high school achievement. College grades were not related. I don't understand that. One found a positive relationship, one a negative, and one non-significant. When you control for background characteristics of parents in high school, what you're coming in with, okay? Campus environment was the only one of the four measures of four dimensions of student best practices that actually made a difference. And remember, supportive college environment in terms of, this has been measured in many different ways. Supportive college environment meaning, is there a sense of belonging to this university? Do they also even perceptions of prejudice and discrimination for both blacks and whites? I mean, the campus milieu as well as those other kinds of characteristics. Okay, so the effects of best practices, minimal explanatory value in these variables of GPA, retention, graduate education. So do you think it predicts anything or affects anything? A hint, it does. Thank goodness. Does it? What do you think it does predict? It does.
I'd like to hope it predicts long-term success.
Oh, I mean like
how they do in life.
Yeah, well, they haven't studied it that far, but I would like to think that too. I know. Okay, what else in terms of less ambitious goals?
Critical thinking.
Oh yeah, and it does. It affects critical thinking. Isn't that what we're supposed to do anyway? Isn't that what? So if you look at this, practices of academic, and these are the two, not peer involvement or participation in class as much, but how rigorous you are and how effective you are as a teacher in terms of challenge and enthusiasm and focus on caring about student involvement do indeed predict student engagement. They're more likely to do their homework. They're more likely to study. Okay, good for us. All right, and in turn, that though they are also, as a predictor of best practices, it predicts student engagement, critical thinking, and increase in academic skill development. And those are practices, as I have here, that openness to learning, valuing learning, thinking, all of these are what we're supposed to be doing in post-secondary education, and our own general education focuses on that, okay? So, finishing the research, I stopped because once I found something good, I'm not looking anymore. That's it. Seriously, I was like, I'm done. Okay. So then we come to issues that we still have to address. And some of them will be, for example, as we focus, if we're going to take this seriously, and if we focus on challenging our students, what do we do, in terms of more reading and rigorous papers and exams and things? What do we do with the few students who are not prepared? Does the university provide support services? And by the way, learning community, I didn't look at it separately, but it's touted in the literature as being fairly effective, okay? But, so what support? Or if academic rigor and challenge and effective teaching is so important, then why are some of us focusing on engaging students with lower level, non-academically challenging exercises, like share your opinion on a social issue, as opposed to making it rigorous? Okay, what do we do about courses that just have one textbook, little reading, just multiple choice exams? That's apparently doesn't cut it when it comes to motivating them to learn, engagement, critical thinking, the things we want. Another question I have is, how do these issues differ by discipline? And that's what, coming full circle, can some of the differences in engagement, if they're, subvert the learning process for others, for other faculty, and frustrate students? Do faculty in the social sciences face additional obstacles because we straddle these worlds of humanities and natural sciences, not fitting completely in either and not being really understood by either, I would argue. So one of the things, we're running out of time, but one of the things, it was just an example where some of the authors argue that, well, humanities, arts, and social sciences are based on expression, not causal explanation. So engaging those students tends to be based on their interpretations / opinions, anecdotal evidence. Whereas sciences, I guess social science, you drop the science, but sciences are based on quantitative reasoning. Well, I would argue all arts, humanities, we're all here to engage in reasoning and critical thinking and so on. So if you look at, we don't even understand our different disciplines in many ways. Humanities, look at this. We're still, gen ed goals, still supposed to critically analyze literature. Okay, it doesn't say come in with your favorite comic book, although that you might critically analyze that. I understand that. Okay, understand the perspective of minority and women. That contributes to a supportive climate. Good for us. Okay, math, quantitative data, predictions, inferences. Get it. Social sciences, research, hypotheses, data collection, data measurement, data analysis. Notice there's data there, okay? There's hypothesis, there's research. So one of the things that we face, two things for social sciences, is that when they come to us, they typically haven't had a course in high school. In fact, most of our colleagues have not had a course in social science. You have in government or you have in history, but not necessarily sociology. And students have lived in this world, and they have opinions and prejudices about everything that we study. Okay? And sociology focuses, in particular, it's founded in exposing inequality, in debunking, in looking at groups, in looking at inequalities by class, by race, by gender, by sexual orientation. All of these things challenge their incoming prejudices, their stereotypes, their beliefs, okay? Their privilege, okay? So my argument would be, one of the things, and you can tell me how you engage, is to take, and this doesn't just happen in English, I've heard that it's happened even in my own department years ago or whatever, but that to take, as this particular introductory English person had done, let's do our major technique of involvement is debate the pros and cons of a social issues. For example, these are literally topics that were given. Are children of homosexuals, we shouldn't do it because they're more likely to become homosexuals. We have data on that, and the research suggests that they're not. Okay, is it good to hit children when they disobey? Well, we have data that shows there's a lot of very negative consequences. Does reverse discrimination exist? Now, how do you debate the pros and cons without research? When students are, my argument to end this in 2 minutes or 2 more slides, is when students are encouraged in any discipline to argue their opinions, particularly on social issues, independent of the data that exist. Or in some cases, I've had examples of students who come back. There was one where, an example of one of these social issues about welfare dependency, and said, well, she said, I have to say the opposite too and show research that supports that it really does, this policy creates dependency, when indeed there was no research to support that. And I was at a loss. I said, well, I can't help you because there are no data, to my knowledge, that are going to argue this or this or this, that when you do this, it contradicts, as I have here, the scientific values and methods that we're trying to teach. And it makes it so hard for social scientists, and we're in arts and letters, humanities and social sciences, that the process we're trying to do of engage them. In addition to which, in the research process, to debate issues particularly involving those of disenfranchised groups in society, without bringing the data to bear, is antithetical to our mission of encouraging civic and moral and social responsibility. That's one of our missions. And finally, I don't see that in all of my bleary-eyed literature review. Not once was that mentioned as something that was useful. It's certainly not rigorous, okay, in terms of any best practices. So at this point, what I think we need to do is, we know a lot from the research. We know what our limitations are, and I'm not saying there aren't exceptions. I know of 1 or 2 cases, certainly at a minimum, where students had dropped out of other colleges and then they said, because of my mentoring they stayed, or because of your mentoring, you know, they went on to get a PhD in areas, become very successful. But on average, we know what we can do on average. So my question then is for us to engage in dialogue more together with university-funded lunches. Ways to help each other, ways to reinforce each other, ways to continue to challenge the ways we think about engaging students. So now I'm very, very grateful that you've been here, and now I would love to hear comments and feedback.
One of the things that we face as a university, and many universities face, is that we as full-time faculty aren't the only people engaging our students.
Right.
But we do have a lot of adjunct faculty engaging students. And the ability to develop the challenging, rigorous involvement with the disciplines that we're teaching, when that's not the major function, because that's our major function as full-time faculty.
Right.
How do we try to make sure and instill these kind of values of high standards and challenge in the wide range of adjunct faculty?
That's really an excellent point that when I was cutting, I left that out. But that is a concern. I have a concern even that we don't train our adjuncts. We don't tend to train our adjuncts. They're in our department, for example, 2/3 of our undergraduates are taught by adjuncts now. Okay, that includes upper level courses being taught. And unless and to my knowledge, in most departments, including our own, we've just begun the process of beginning to, they're not mentored, that we give them a syllabus and say, go for it, and they have full-time jobs. They have 2 or 3 full-time jobs they're trying to do, and they're coming in 1 night a week, and they need help, they need to understand, they need training, as we all do. I wish I could get more training. I'm not really anxious to spend $1,000 a year to do more workshops, but I'm thinking about it as we're getting students who are so technologically driven in terms of their Facebook. I want to one day find a way when half the class, I teach 220 students, about 50 are on Facebook. I know it. Okay, or they're playing games because everyone's engaged and they're pointing, and it's not my lecture, okay, that they're pointing to. I want to figure out a way to be able to enter on Facebook and just pop up just have my head pop up on all of their little things during class. I don't know how to do it, but there's got to be a way we can find this out. But yeah, so when it comes to adjuncts, I think one of the things we got to do and make a university commitment to having someone in the department or the department's responsible for training them, for helping them to understand what's expected before they agree to do this, for evaluating their teaching, and that's a heck of a lot of work, but I think we have to do it. Yep.
I don't have any data for this, but I'd like to debate your issue about debates. It seems to me that is an important way that the students get engaged, and there's no shortage of issues for which there is data on both sides. Obviously, it's not useful to have a debate about something for which there's nothing on one side or the other. But why isn't that a useful technique and for getting people engaged?
If you frame it within the research, absolutely. No, that's not my issue. My issue is if you frame it with your opinion is just as important as everyone's opinion, and let's just have a debate on opinions. And my argument is we didn't even do that in high school. Gosh, in grade school. If you're going to frame a debate, I love that. Okay, and I usually bring that in as a technique. Here's a research study that shows that this is biological. You know, there's some research on homosexuality. I will even bring in quotes from textbooks that cite this study, and I'll say, okay, let's look at the research, and what do you make of that, and engage them. But my argument is independent of research, or critical thinking. Yeah, no, a debate away. Okay. Yes,
I can address that if you don't mind. As someone who has taught at the English Language Center, students from other countries who are trying very hard to pass our writing sample placement test, they learn counter to their own culture or their own need for data. They learn to address topics like, should there be guns allowed in schools? Mm-hmm. And should phys ed be a requirement in high schools? And I'm quite sure there's data, but our own college our own university will ask students as they are entering.
That's an excellent point. Thank you.
It starts there.
Yes, and it frankly terrifies me that would even be a question about guns and should we allow guns in school? Oh my goodness gracious. And if you know of any research that suggests, yes.
I'm going to come from a student's perspective.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking back days when I was a student going around campus, and the issues that we really face as students is the distraction. And I mean, for everybody, I mean, whether we are a student or whether we are working as whatever faculty, staff, or the distraction is the primary concern that needs to be addressed in some sense. And
Which
I think
distraction, meaning?
I mean, we are all distracted. I mean, when I'm a student, I need to be focused on engaging myself into studies and things like that. And there are the distractions out there, whether it's Facebook technology or whatever it is out there.
Oh, you mean in class or out or both?
In class or out of class, whatever it is. I mean, those needs to be addressed in some sense. So I'm thinking, I mean, these days marketing has been used extensively in so many ways to just sell products and things like that.
Yes.
So why can't we use something similar to, I mean, we have all these displays out there saying that, I mean, have a quote that kind of reminds them, hey guys, I mean a quote, because I've always found these nice quotes by great guys who have achieved things in life, repeatedly pushing these things on these screens, or maybe some snippets of videos that kind of motivates students across campus, even when they're walking around, maybe buying a coffee or anything like that. I mean,
I like that idea.
I mean, that might start, I mean, okay, if they have something distracted right now, and if they see that, they might, okay, no, I need to pay attention to this thing. I mean, I should forget being distracted.
A big thing that says free, and then subliminally study or something like that.
Yes.
No, seriously, I think it's an excellent idea.
Something like that. I mean, that's the biggest challenge that every student, or I mean, whoever is trying to work hard is always facing, because they want to be in both the places.
Yes.
And getting them on track might enable them to do something more.
Yeah. That's a wonderful point.
I like the thought of 3 little words from Baba Ram Dass, be here now.
Uh-huh.
Comments?
I think that students will be engaged in a class and committed to a class when they can see that the instructor is also engaged and committed. That makes a huge difference. In fact, they want to. They're eager for that. They appreciate it so much.
They are.
The instructor knowing who they are, giving them time, means a lot. And if you're just kind of trying to brush off students, or it seems like you're not taking your job seriously, you're trying to minimize the amount of time and effort that you put into it, then they'll do the same thing.
That's exactly right.
However,
La 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 la.
it means a larger time commitment on our part
Exactly.
to do that.
Exactly. Which takes away from
It certainly does. And so the
research.
university does not always place that as a top priority, especially for tenure and promotion, et cetera.
Yes.
There's pressures to go in the other direction.
Yes.
And therefore it makes it hard because you're torn.
Yes.
You're really torn in terms of
Agree.
how can you manage both things. The more you're engaged with the students, the more requests are going to come to you.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly.
And therefore, somehow the system for rewarding faculty would have to balance the two maybe somewhat better than what we have done. As we kind of strive to be a top research university, we may be sending signals to faculty members not to be devoting as much time and engaging the students the way in which you're describing.
Right, right. You're right. If you don't set reward, I mean, people will say, well, they both complement each other, but there also is, as far as I know, and if someone knows differently, help me out, but there's a finite number of hours in the day or night, and you know, my eyes can get so red, and that's it. But the issue is how we can't do. There's just so many hours. So if you're engaging them and committed, which the research sex is excellent, then there's going to be some pull away, right, from research.
You know, I think there's a difference too between engaging the student, you know, personally, and my goal always has been getting the student to engage with the material that they're studying. That's a very different issue, and that doesn't take me any more time than a regular class would be, because that's what how I try to structure, organize, develop assignments, get them engaged with what they're studying and having a reason to do it. And that's different than engaging personally and spending time with them outside of the classroom and other sorts of things. And now that I'm teaching a lot of courses online, that becomes very easy to do.
Yeah, how do you get passion online? No, could just cut that part out. How do you get passionate teacher engagement online? No, that still doesn't sound right. But yes.
I think for me, you do it by what I put in my class notes and the way I structure the class notes and the kind of intensity that I try to write in there to get them, this guy cares about what he's doing and cares about this issue. And once they see that, then they get engaged.
I'm sorry.
Well, I teach online, and when I look at the end of semester evaluations that come back, one thing that I've found is I answer emails quickly, so I try and give timely feedback. That's important. I also create videos because a lot of students are around the country and not geographically centrally located, especially where I am. So I create videos. Some of them are actually me. Some of them are narrated PowerPoints, and that takes extra time. A lot of the other professors don't do that. And so they get to hear me, they get to sometimes see me, and then at the end of the semester I use Skype, so we do live presentations.
Oh,
so
wow.
they have a capstone project, I chunk it up into pieces, and then they present in like 5 different sessions in the evenings what they found to their fellow students. And so with that, we get to hear each other and talk to each other live. And the comments I've gotten back over the years is they really appreciate that connectedness, and now they know who Professor Harrison is. Whereas with a lot of the others, I'm an adjunct, a lot of the other adjuncts, they don't know who they are. There isn't any connection.
So you could substitute pictures of Brad Pitt or whoever, right?
Not when I do the video.
Right, I know.
We have a similar capability here because we have Adobe Connect, and maybe many of you have used Adobe Connect, and you can have a student really anywhere in the world, and they can be doing a presentation, and students anywhere in the world can be connected into the URL for that particular Adobe Connect, and they can be listening and participating and asking questions. So it's a really wonderful technique to get students, even at a distance, talking with each other and working together as a group.
Will you be presenting on that this year, seriously?
No, but next week,
Okay.
or in 3 weeks, I'm going to be talking about point counterpoint as a technique for critical thinking, kind of the debate issue.
So same time, same bat channel, 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, you know, we think a lot about how students come unprepared. And I had a senior in my office the other day who was still working out her math problems on her fingers and having trouble figuring out why she was not able to do the quizzes fast enough. But it seems to me, and I'm teaching a large freshman class this semester for the first time, that an awful lot of these students, the thing that they're unprepared in is that no one's ever taught them how to study or how to do college. You know, they really have no idea how to manage their time. When they're no longer in this kind of, you have a class every hour and you go to the next class and you have homework every night. You know, it seems to me that we could dramatically improve that dimension, because I don't think we have any place where they learn that other than by trial and lots of
fire. And I've thought about that a lot in academic orientation. I mean, I've had students come to me, I'm flunking, and I spend about 5 hours with this group, and then to come to find out, well, I spent at least 2 hours studying for this test, for this midterm, and I just almost want to cry, because, yeah, they just don't understand.
I read the book, by which they meant they looked at the words. I know. And they don't understand why they aren't learning it.
Right.
Looked at the book.
Or the importance of buying the book. I sometimes get yelled at by the bookstore of only 100, we only have 75 copies bought and you have 225 students. What's up? I don't know. Let me get back to you. Okay, probably 1 or 2 more, because some of us, including me, have our students waiting. Anyone that hasn't talked? Melvina, do you have something to add? No. Dr. Sumter?
So going back to what we just talked, I think it goes back to the high school and how the parents are associated with that. So, I mean, my question is, how does one really address that? Because when it comes down to having passion for something, have they seen passion within their family? Have they seen passion within their groups? So they are being brought up. And if, I mean, having a passion and being able to cultivate that passion, or even keeping up to that, is a challenge for, I mean, not just kids or not just us, I mean, everybody. I mean, so it all starts from high school, and so, I mean, how does, I mean, how do we address this?
From grade school, first grade, right.
Yeah.
But remember, while we may not be able to affect grades, at least as measured currently, you know, the GPA or retention first year or getting a degree, we do appear to have an effect on, if we're passionate, if we care about development, if we put the effort in, they catch it. A lot, not all, but they get it, and they do start to do the homework, because we expect it and demand it and have things. So in that sense, we do still have that very important. That's what we're supposed to do anyway, I thought. Teach them critical thinking, teach them a knowledge base, teach them and learn from them too. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think we can do that much. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. All right, maybe we can figure out how to do more. Thank you for foregoing pumpkin carving and everything to help me figure this out, and have a wonderful class, I know, as I violate all of these in my class today. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.